Hello and welcome to another Mobalytics video. I'm your host Virkayu, and in this one we shall take a look at the 5 best runes and rune setups you should be abusing in the current meta. That's right, not content with micro patches every 2 weeks, Riot decided to step things up, change a few things about the dragons, alter the map a little bit, and then shifted the power in certain underused, underappreciated, and more niche runes. And of course, once you understand the changes in the runes and the best way to use them, it is important to know which runes you and your team are using, as well as the enemy team, and that is provided by the Mobalytics live companion app, designed to give you every possible bit of information you need to actually carry games, all while you're in the loading screen before you get into the game. And now to begin with, we really should start with Guardian. What changed is basically the tether ranges actually increased from 175 to 350, and the most important shift is, yes, while the shield amount has increased slightly, the trigger condition has been altered. Rather than being triggered by any damage, it now will have a certain amount of post-mitigation damage in the last 2.5 seconds, which will be the minimum amount for activation. And this is huge because when it has a 70-second cooldown at the beginning of the game, any sort of damage triggering it means it won't be used appropriately and effectively is just wasted. So these small damage amounts won't proc it, which means it's more likely to be used. And that high range means you don't have to be right next to someone the whole time just to give them a nice shield. And contrary to popular belief ADCs, the support's role is not to sit on your hip the entire game. And so basically having that backup shield when your ADC gets caught out as you move even slightly away, much like babysitting, will be huge for not only melee supports but also range supports because of that range increase. One of the big benefactors of this rune change is Lulu. Overall, it is definitely more of a boost on Ardent champs because of the shield percentage bonus boost from items like Ardent Sensor. You might have heard of it, Season 7 rings a bell, please never again. But Lulu really doesn't need the damage from Aerie, shielding is nice, but Guardian is now better, and the runes from the Resolve tree really suit her well. Font of Life, Bone Plating, Revitalize, you can still get CDR and Biscuits afterwards as you wish in the Cosmic Insight rune, but overall making it much easier to proc in the first place because she can be further away from them. Obviously you need to be as a ranged support, and I always talk about chain CC with ganking. Well, now we have chain shielding. That's right, Guardian proc shield and then use your own. And as frustrating as it is, it basically makes the carry she is protecting even more difficult to kill while they're damage boosted, and they also just received their random buffs a patch or two ago. It's important to note that the Guardian rune still scales. It still has an AP and health ratio, so it becomes even better later on as you get the Ardent Sensor, as you complete those other supportive items. But even if you don't necessarily go into those runes for whatever reason, the base shield amount has been increased by 50 at max level. Other champions for similar reasons are Nami, Bard, Thresh. Thresh can be in your face, easy to proc if the ally is of course sitting back a bit. Bard is a little bit different in that he uses it for defense, but still the base damage, his base damage is so high as well. And of course everyone's favorite funneler Taric is also making good use of this with his obnoxious kit and itemization. Right, the second rune we need to talk about is Unflinching, because when you combine this with the Legend Tenacity rune on the Precision tree, it can remove the need for Merc Treads. Sure, not always literally, but that's the basic idea. I mean, we could go deep into the numbers if you like, pages and pages of calculations, supercomputers needed, but just let it be known if you are a tank and you like being CC resilient, maybe you want to go Swifties and not be forced into those Merc Treads, Unflinching plus Legend Tenacity can really offset the loss of the Merc Treads, enabling different playstyles. And all of this is because now you gain 10% slow resist and 10% tenacity, and that's base, right? You don't have to use your summoner spell to now gain access to that. Also, however, you gain access to 20%, up to 20% more of slow resist and tenacity based upon your missing health. Now, if you're obviously running Bruiser setups, Conqueror, maybe a PTA in that first Precision tree, you can go into the Resolve tree secondary and gain access to this beautiful rune. This works on Set, it works on Volibear, anything like that. And especially from a jungler perspective, as I already said, gives you access to the Swifties. I did speed set jungling on my channel recently as well, and you're no longer punished for not going Merc Treads. And the same can be said against full AD team comps where you want Ninja Tabby, but maybe they have a ton of CC that you feel like you are forced into Merc Treads even if you don't need the magic resist. And now the next rune was met with large boulders and rocks crying out across the globe as all Malphite mains, as the loss of raw damage and ratios on the Predator rune destroyed their goal of AP one-shot annihilation. Now the cooldown is much lower, but so is the damage. You can use it earlier in the game, so if you get First Blood for example, you can go back, buy some boots, and now use Predator. However, while that 1.5 second ramp up time still exists, the duration overall has gone from 15 seconds down to 10 seconds. And despite this, that isn't even the biggest change. Upon completion, Predator now grants 45% bonus movement speed while moving towards enemy champions at a range of 3,000 units. and that includes enemies out of vision, but it is no longer global. It's no longer run firsty McFirst to a situation and then ult them so they die, and it will only deal that damage and end the hunt against enemy champions specifically. All in all, Riot really wanted this to be a utility for gap closing, for getting those roams and ganks off, but overall there has been mixed reception to this rune specifically. Annie, Hecarim, Nunu, these are all champions you think about using Predator with, however their win rates have actually slightly decreased on this patch with the update. In the case of having it mid lane, having a 15-second channel time so that you can run down the river and just do a whole bunch of damage is very useful, specifically from Annie, maybe even from Pyke as well. But the removal of this damage, in addition to the channel time being less, has definitely affected mid lane Annie. The utility of the rune is of course shifted, so people are learning how to play around it, and such win rates will, diverge, go up and down over the course of the next few weeks. In Hecarim's case, he's the one person who can actually benefit, purely because he actually, gets damage from movement speed. So even though the loss of damage is there, he still gets conversion from movement speed into damage, though he is still much better with Conqueror. Nunu, on the other hand, in Korea loves this AP Predator spam gank way of playing up and down the rivers, using it as much as possible as soon as it's up, and that's what Nunu's really great at. His CC, his snowball, his movement speed, this really makes him one of the most potent gankers in the game. And when you add Predator to that, with the damage at the end of it, with the fact that you can channel 15 seconds, roll a snowball up the river and get it done, that all sounds way too good to be true. But at the moment, the shift of this has made it more difficult for Nunu to really capitalize on it because of the 3000 unit range, because of the damage loss. However, while all this is true and while all this is shown in the win rates, Nunu and Willem will be getting some AP damage buffs in their kit. If the patch is live when this video goes out, then maybe you should go and try it out as well. But overall, the usage case of Predator has definitely shifted, and once people get used to it, I think we'll see the win rate spike again. However, the one champion from support with Predator is Pyke, and he loves this rune and he uses it to great success because he doesn't really need the damage component. Running towards champions with increased movement speed so he can get his combo off is all he's really looking for. There has been some rumors and flirtations with Blitzcrank using Predator. You have to try that out. It's not really heavily used at the moment, but also Fiddlesticks. In Korea specifically, once again, we have Dark Harvest, Electrocute, and Predator on Fiddlesticks jungle. And the fact that this is now towards champions is a reliable amount of movement speed within a decent range, basically allows Fiddlesticks to actually get to his target, get off his silences and fears, and basically suck them to death. And again, Fiddlesticks doesn't really need that damage component whatsoever. It is nice, but if you're focusing on the ganking playstyle, then obviously you don't really need it and you're more about the presence. And with his particular kit and strength in the game at the moment, Fiddlesticks basically is not short of anything. And the absolute biggest thing that I haven't yet mentioned, I can't believe it took me this long, is that the cooldown has shifted from going 150 to 100 second scaling to 100 to 70 second scaling. That's 50 seconds off the level 1 usage of it, and that's 30 seconds after max rank. So yes, it's a little less powerful in certain areas, however, it is up much more frequently. That really helps Pyke, it helps Fiddlesticks, although we still recommend Harvest and Electrocute as go-to runes, and once those damage buffs comes in for Nunu, might even help them, particularly in Korea, and if you'd like to adopt that playstyle yourself. The fourth setup we want to briefly talk about is Unsealed Spellbook. Yes, it didn't get buffs or nerfs in this patch, however, the Unsealed Spellbook plus Nimbus Cloak, using more summoners to get more value, is especially useful on Galio. It might not come as a surprise to you, but Nimbus Cloak is pretty popular. It's pretty much a go-to on many junglers, especially who like the Stalker's Blade Smite. But all of a sudden, when we add Hextech Flash, Nimbus, we can use Hextech, get a boost of movement speed. Very useful on stuff like movement speed jungling. When you go Phase Rush, Celerity, Water Walking, Nimbus Cloak into Hextech. You can of course also do the Omni Stone into the Nimbus Cloak with set support. Specifically on him, this is an amazing rune set. I mentioned Galio earlier as well. The idea is getting the most movement speed in a specific scenario out of Nimbus Cloak and having the mobility when you don't have map scaling through the use of Hextech. Being a melee champion and engaged champion with CC that's very powerful and especially a huge disruptor like I said in Galio, having that versatility and adaptability throughout all phases of the game, specifically early and mid of course, is absolutely huge in terms of swinging wins in your favor by winning these scenarios where you actually just chase people down and they can do nothing about it. And on the note of movement speed, the final rune we must talk about is Approach Velocity. What changed is basically this rune had a very low pick rate, much like Unflinching that we talked about earlier. And instead of giving you that 15% bonus movement speed towards champions that you have impaired, you will now gain half of that, that's 7.5 for those of you who've been in quarantine too long, when you move towards any movement impaired enemy champion. This increases to 15 if you were the one to do this deed. But most importantly, it no longer has a maximum range of 1,000 units for champions you have CC'd. Now obviously not all of us can affiliate or stun people from halfway across the map, but it is merely a limitation that's removed that gives accessibility to all champions past, present, and future that may have been limited by this 1k unit cap. However, I should also add that any Glacial Augment champions, any players of those in the chat, well, you buy Spooky Ghosts, and that would often trigger way past the 1000 unit range, so you wouldn't get the effect. Well, now there's no limit, so if you slow them with Spooky Ghosts, off you go. Anyone heard of Ash support? Anyone? Yeah, it's very obnoxious and difficult to deal with, but suddenly you can slow and stun and run towards everyone very quickly. You can now be a fast Ashe. And in general, the basic huge general team fighting implications for this rune is that because you get a 7.5% movement speed increase towards any movement impaired enemy champions, it means that whoever has approach velocity on your team can become a very nice follow-up engage goon squad. Sometimes it's very frustrating to go in, get the CC down, and everyone's lagging behind. That's why Cladot has such great utility for those mid-game wins. All of a sudden, any bruisers or anyone with follow-up CC, chain CC, any sort of disruption and follow-up engage can suddenly follow you with this approach velocity and actually remain relevant in the fight instead of you engaging and simply dying. Obviously, of course, this does play into your own hands, don't engage stupidly, but the point is now there's a rune that can actually be used for great CC comms to follow up and engage and stay together. Well, there you have it, 5 runes and rune setups that you should be using and abusing thanks to all those changes that came in the most recent patch. Keep an eye out for future changes like this. It's always interesting when runes change and items change because it can affect a large quantity of champions and bring certain champs into the meta that otherwise were hidden in obscurity. And with that, I thank you for watching. Please do like, share, and comment if you enjoyed and learned something. Please subscribe to Mobalytics for all that juicy content coming very soon for every single role. Go and try out that high-quality live companion app link in the description below. I have been your host Virkayu, and as always, I will see you all in the next video.